I've been married to my husband for 10 years, and only now do I realize I never really understood what he wanted. I feel like such a terrible wife. I, 38 female, have been married to my husband, 38 male, for 10 years. We dated for 2 years before marriage but also dated for a year and a half during the end of our college years. My husband is a good man. He works from home as a tech executive. He goes into his office around 7:30 a.m. and works until 6 p.m. every day. In addition to this, he'll do the laundry every week while I'm at work, does most of the cooking, almost all of the meal planning, and spends all of his time with me and his extended family. When he's not working, he spends most of his free time working on projects around our property, small renovation projects. He renovated our entire home himself when we bought it, improvements to our yard such as a huge deck, a fancy patio, pergolas, custom wood furniture. He is completely supportive of me, encourages me in positive ways, and pushes me to pursue my interests. I couldn't ask for a better partner. He is a dream come true. My husband does well professionally. He doesn't spend money on much beyond tools to aid in our ever-ongoing renovation projects. He's always been difficult to give meaningful gifts to. For Christmas this year, he didn't ask for anything. When I asked him what he'd like for Christmas, he told me that he didn't need anything. This is his default response for any gift-giving occasion. His birthday, Christmas. He's asked me in the past to specifically not give him anything for Valentine's Day or our anniversary. This has always made me want to put in more effort. But the truth is that the more effort I put in, the less he seems to like whatever I give him. He tells me he likes whatever I give him, but his smile isn't authentic and he doesn't really seem to express any interest in most things I give him beyond the moment, as if the interest he expresses is more appeasement. He doesn't own much beyond tools and a, not collectible, sneaker collection. He just likes relatively mundane sneakers. And books, most of which are work-related. Before his birthday this year I asked him what he wanted for his birthday. I don't need anything. I mulled this over and then I fell down a rabbit hole on the internet about relationship advice. This led to me going back to him and asking him what he'd like to do on his birthday. He said he had a lot of chores to do and was hoping to spend his birthday, which was on a Sunday this year, completing a couple of house projects. I wasn't satisfied with this after considering it for a while. So I later asked him, what would be a nice thing to do on your birthday? He looked at me for a moment and started talking. We live on Long Island, New York. On the South Shore is a series of bays and barrier islands that are set up as beaches. There's a causeway that connects the main island to the beaches on the barrier islands. We visit the beach several times a week in the summer driving over that causeway. He said that he thinks it would be nice to drive across the causeway early in the morning before the road got busy, to drive slow to enjoy the view. He's always the driver and it's difficult to appreciate the view when trying to keep an eye on the road, and that he always wanted to be the passenger so that he could focus entirely on the view of the sun coming up over the bay and the Atlantic. Then he just smiled and turned his focus back to what he was working on. We've driven over that bridge maybe 1,000 times together. He's always driven. I felt like an absolute jerk. The morning of his birthday we woke up early, made some coffee, and I drove him over the causeway to the beaches, and back. I drove slow and he stared out at the view on both sides of the car. When we made it back over the causeway he asked if we could do it again, and so we did. And when we made it off the causeway the second time, I asked if he wanted to go again but he said no, that he was hungry and wanted to go home. I don't know if it was my imagination or not but I thought he looked happier that day than I had seen him in a long time. He busied himself working on the deck and I closed myself in the bathroom and fought off sobbing. Because all he wanted for his birthday was to look at the water and I got him another dumb watch that he'll put with all his other watches and never wear. I got him a watch because I don't know the man I've been married to for a decade, who I have spent over 15 years of my life with. The next week I asked him what would be a nice thing to do on Saturday. He said he always wanted to go to the Cradle of Aviation Museum ever since it had its major renovation. I looked it up. It reopened following that renovation in 2002. We were 14. He's basically wanted to go there his entire life and hasn't made it. It's 20 minutes away from where we live. When I asked him why he never went, he said he'd been busy with work. So I took him to the museum. I knew he always was interested in aerospace. His father and grandparents were all involved in that industry. When we got home from it, he went to work on our new planters out back and I couldn't stop myself from sobbing in the bathroom. With Father's Day coming up, I asked him what would be a nice thing to do on Father's Day. I always give him a Father's Day gift from our dog and we have people over. I asked him what would be a nice gift from our dog this year. He said that he thinks it would be nice if we drove out to the National Cemetery at Calverton to visit his father's grave. And he then said he didn't need anything for a gift. When I pressed him on it, he said he's not a father, we don't have kids. My father's dead. I don't have anything to celebrate. And I just broke down sobbing there in front of him. He thought I was upset about not having had kids, but truth is that we never prioritized it and it was too late medically for me when we tried. He had always taken a whatever happens happens approach to the topic of parenthood, neither wanting nor not wanting children. But I was upset because in that moment I realized that he didn't want anything I had pushed on him on Father's Day and had made the mistake of prioritizing him over his feelings. His father passed weeks before our wedding. His father's goal was to live long enough to attend our wedding but the cancer was too far along. I fed him cake and steak for 10 years on Father's Day without realizing his thoughts were on the other side of the island at his father's grave. I failed him for our entire relationship. He asks me for absolutely nothing except to not make a fuss over him. And I failed at even doing that.
My wife said she was sorely tempted to cheat on me with a guy at work, and I told her I'm sorely tempted to throw away everything we've ever built together. For background, I, 33 male, and my wife Kate, 32 female, have been married for 8 years. We have a son who is 3 years old, who was unplanned but not unwelcome. When my wife found out that she was pregnant, it obviously came as a surprise to us. She had been taking birth control ever since we started dating, since we agreed that we were not financially ready to have a kid. However, after being married for 5 years and advancing our careers, we felt like we could make it work. Thus, we decided to keep the child, and began planning for the next phase of our lives. Prior to Kate getting pregnant, she worked as a waitress at a local restaurant, making just above minimum wage once tips were factored in. On the other hand, I am a construction worker who made 2 to 3 times more than her at the time. We lived in a decent apartment, but we agreed that we would need a real house to have the space for our child, so we began looking for our first home. During that process, and as Kate's pregnancy went further along, she quit her job to focus on preparing for the baby. We found a house that we liked, but it was more expensive than I was hoping for. I make good money working construction, but having to fund 2 people, a new mortgage, and buy all the supplies a baby needs is not easy. I began putting in more hours at work to be able to afford everything, resulting in me being able to spend less time at home with my wife. The baby finally comes, and he's a healthy little boy. I couldn't be more proud, but once he was born, Kate began to change. She was more tired and stressed, having to care for a newborn, which I don't blame her at all for. I know kids are a lot of work. I essentially had to raise my little brother who was 10 years younger than me growing up. However, Kate would also complain that I wasn't around very often, and that when I was home, I wouldn't help with the baby as much as she thought I should. I explained to her that to be able to afford the house, the baby, and the 2 of us by myself, I had to put a lot of extra hours in, and when I come home every day, I'm exhausted. I lift heavy stuff for a living. I'm lucky to be able to make it through the day without my back being terribly sore. Still, I tried to help out more. I changed diapers where I could, fed the baby where I could, etc. The one thing I refused to do was get up in the middle of the night, which is something I know upsets her. My reasoning is that I'm barely getting 5 hours of sleep a night, and if I get any less, I'm going to be an utter wreck on the job. If that happens and I get less hours or even get fired, we're financially screwed. As time went on, we kept making it work, and eventually things get less crazy and stressful. The older the kid gets, the less constant attention and work he needs from us. That's not saying caring for a toddler is easy, but it's easier than caring for an infant who can't sleep through the night. 2 months ago, Kate suggested that she get a regular job again, and that we use the extra income to pay for a nanny, and in general help with the expenses. I agreed, because I was exhausted and the idea of being able to put in less overtime sounded great. Fast forward to last night, and Kate has been working as a cashier for 6 weeks now. We've hired a nanny, and the money situation isn't nearly as tight. I was able to work less, though with Kate working now, I'm not able to see her in the mornings, which is usually when I would see her due to how my shifts work. I thought things were going great, until Kate sits me down last night to have a conversation. She admitted to me that there's a guy at her work who's been flirting with her, despite knowing she's married. He's funny, easygoing, handsome, etc. She said that he asked if she was available to go on a date behind my back, and though she said no, she was sorely tempted to say yes. This blindsided me then, but now that I've had a day to think about it, I think I can see how this happened. She was always upset that I wasn't home very often, wasn't there to help and support her with the kid, and so on. Our current arrangement allowed me to have more energy when I came home, but since she leaves for work in the morning before I wake up, the actual duration of time I see her each day has shrunk even further. I think that the reason she was tempted by this guy at work is that he's giving her the attention she wants from me. I can understand that, but it also pissed me off. Frankly, I've been busting my butt for 3 years to afford our child, the house she wanted, and her ability to be a stay-at-home mom. I've been working 10 or 12-hour days 6 days a week to afford this, and she's tempted by some guy at work after knowing him for 6 weeks. I felt betrayed, more than I ever have before. I asked to see her phone, and she gave it to me without resistance. I went through all her contacts, deleted messages, everything, and didn't find anything suspicious. I don't believe that she actually cheated and is only pretending to be tempted too, but I suppose it's possible. She seemed genuinely remorseful during our conversation, but that didn't make it feel any better. I told her in the heat of the moment that I want a divorce, and this caused her to break down in tears and beg me to stay. She asked if I would tear our family apart over just the idea of her cheating, and I threw her words back in her face and said I was sorely tempted. I then went to bed and ignored her attempts to get me to talk, since I had work today, the work that has kept our family afloat for the last 3 years, and more if you want to count the 5 years I spent making 3 times more than her. I thought about this all day today, and I'm not sure what to do. I can't get over the idea of my wife wanting to cheat with the first man she spent any extended time with in 3 years. She asked me if I was going to throw it all away over a feeling, but she was going to do the same damn thing with the guy from work. She's angry that I got angry at her in the moment, but I think I have good reason to be furious. Am I in the wrong for throwing divorce in her face like that? Edit. After reading through many of the comments here, I've decided that I'm going to have a thorough conversation with my wife before taking any harsh action like divorce. I feel, or maybe I just hope, that there's still a chance for us to be happy and healthy together, despite everything that's happened. For starters, I'm going to tell her how I truly feel about all this, not just what I was thinking in the heat of the moment when she told me about what happened with the guy from work. It hurts to know that my wife was sorely tempted by some stranger she met 6 weeks ago after being married for 8 years and having a son together. I've busted my butt literally and figuratively to be able to afford everything, and I feel like she hasn't been appreciating that. I understand that she's been busy at home taking care of the kid, but if we were to trade jobs for a day, I highly suspect she would change her tune regarding the division of work and effort that we've been putting in. Also, I plan to tell her that I want her to quit her job immediately. Even if she wasn't tempted at all, I don't want her around the type of scum man to take advantage of married women. If she doesn't agree to this, then I will have to assume that there's more between and guy at work than she's letting on. I'll probably update this post tomorrow once we have that conversation. Thank you everyone for all the feedback and advice, truly. Update. Before I get into the update, I need to clarify something that many commenters were asking about on the initial post. Many people have been asking how my wife getting a job was able to pay for a nanny and me reducing my work hours slightly. The answer is that we live in the northeastern USA, where minimum wages are good, relatively speaking, and that nanny was a poor choice of words on my part. She's more of an informal babysitter, not an official job. She's a college student who wanted to make some money while taking online classes, without dealing with the hassle of getting a real job. My wife makes around $16 per hour with a standard 40-hour work week, while we pay the babysitter $10 per hour for 5 hours per day, 5 days a week. After taxes on my wife's income and paying for the babysitter, we have around $900 a month left over that has allowed me to reduce my hours slightly. Now, for the update. I called in sick to work today, which is something I rarely ever do, and asked my wife to do the same so we could sit down and talk about everything. She agreed, and this morning we had a long, heartfelt discussion. I told her that I was sorry for what I said in the heat of the moment. I don't want to divorce her. I was angry and hurt and wasn't thinking about the damage threatening divorce would do. I told her that I understand things have been difficult for us the last 3 years, but I was shocked that she would be sorely tempted to cheat on me after just 6 weeks with some random guy at her job. I told her that having been the sole, or at least the main provider for our family pretty much the entire time we've known each other, I felt like I wasn't being appreciated enough for the work and effort I've been putting in. She said she felt the same way, that she felt like she was struggling thanklessly since I was never around to be with her. I told her that that was only the case because I had to make enough money to pay for the kid and the house she wanted. And before anyone tries to twist my words, I love my son dearly. I am not simply putting up with him because she wanted to keep him. If I took less overtime to see her and help with the kid more often, we'd have trouble keeping the lights on. We both agreed that we needed more time with each other at home, but talking out how to make that happen took a while. Eventually, I told her that I stand by what I said to her when we first bought the house we are currently in. It is too much house for us. It's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath house with more area than we need, and the mortgage and property taxes are too high. I brought this up when we first looked at the house, but my wife insisted that this would be the perfect house for our family to grow up in, and that once it was paid off, we would be set. But seeing how much we've struggled to afford this house while slowly falling apart physically and mentally, I think she understands now that it's too much. After some prodding, I convinced her that we need to start looking for a house to downsize into. Selling our current house will give us enough cash to pay off the mortgage, though not by much. Once we're in a smaller home with smaller expenses, I won't have to work as much, meaning we can spend more time together as a couple and a family. She told me that she just wanted me back, and I honestly almost cried hearing how much she meant it. I was so focused on work and paying the bills that I lost sight of what we needed as a couple, and our marriage very nearly imploded because of it. The final issue to address was her job, and more specifically the scumbag who was hitting on her while knowing she was married. Given our current financial situation, it would be stupid to make her quit her job and go back to staying at home. Plus it would probably only make her feel trapped again since she only recently got back out into the world after being a stay-at-home mom. However, I can't stand the thought of that guy even looking at my wife, especially since I know she harbored some sort of interest at some point, even if it came from loneliness and desperation. I told her that at the very least, she needs to report the guy to management or HR and ask for different hours so that they are never in the building at the same time. If that happens, then there's no reason for her to just quit, but if that doesn't happen, then I'll be helping her look for a new job immediately. Things are still difficult right now, but as I typed this a couple hours after the conversation, I think we've pulled back from the point of no return. We're both just taking the day to calm down and think rationally about what needs to happen to get our financial and personal relationship back on track, but I'm hopeful. Thank you so much to all the people who gave advice and constructive criticism. I know lots of you suggested couples therapy, and while I'm considering it, that's another big expense I don't want to take on right now unless it's absolutely necessary. If things continue to improve between my wife and me, then I won't waste the money, but if things start to stagnate or get worse again, then I'll bite the bullet and suggest getting professional help to her.
My boyfriend has disappeared every weekend for the past 3 years, and I just found out he's been lying to me about where he goes. My boyfriend, 27 male, and I, 24 female, have been together for 3 years. We don't live together but are close enough to spend a lot of time together. However, it is very rare for us to spend a whole day together. When we have, it's been a weekday where our schedules have just happened to line up, like days with no work and no class. We have never spent a day on the weekend together. He works as a research assistant while getting his PhD. Every single weekend for the 3 years we've been together he insists he has work. I realize how stupid I've been now, but foolishly I trusted him. I trusted that he had work every single weekend for 3 years. That was, until today. I've been studying for finals and it's the toughest it's ever been, so I was craving some time with him. Just a day where we could kick back and relax with each other. Of course, he says he can't because he's working and I shut up about it. So, today I'm getting antsy anyway and hoping we could at least spend the evening together. I end up texting him, asking when he thinks he'll be back and we can spend the night. I've done this plenty of times before and he always responds fairly quick. This time I'm waiting for a while. After 2 hours, I decide to text a work friend of his who's also a research assistant with him. Wouldn't you know it, it turns out they don't have work today. In fact, he informs me in that same text that they rarely ever have work on weekends. Rarely ever. So now, I'm sitting here wondering what the heck is going on. I have no idea how to confront him about this. I mean, this has been going on for 3 years. If he's cheating on me, he basically has a second family at this point. But obviously that's where my mind goes and I have no clue what else it could possibly be. Like, is there any possible explanation for this besides cheating? How in the world do I confront him about something he's been doing for 3 years? Since he's doing whatever it is tomorrow, do I just drive over to his place in the morning and wait and then follow him? Has anyone had anything like this happen to them before? Update number 1. When I logged off, things seemed to be pretty split on what I should do. Most people just decided to call him a cheater or say that I'm the side chick. Frankly, I wasn't sure I could wait another day to confront him, so I confronted him the night of that post, no games or stalking or anything. Anyway, I had texted him telling him to come over when his work was done and he did. I waited about 5 minutes, if that, for him to settle in before telling him that we needed to talk about something important. He immediately responded with, "Uh-oh," which was a bit demeaning, but that sarcastic response honestly matches his personality. I tell him everything that happened, how hurt I was, how I didn't feel like I could trust him about anything considering he's been doing this for 3 years, and then asked if he had anything to say. He told me he wasn't cheating on me or anything like that, he was just embarrassed about what he had been doing. I asked him what he could possibly be so embarrassed about as to hide it and lie to me about it for 3 years. He takes like a minute to compose himself and then mutters something. He clearly feels guilty, but I obviously don't hear it, so I ask him what he said because I didn't hear. He tells me that he volunteers at a homeless shelter every weekend since coming here for his PhD. Volunteering at a homeless shelter? I swear to you, whatever emotions are coming across here were multiplied 10 times in the moment. I could not comprehend what he was saying. Like, he was embarrassed for volunteering at a homeless shelter? It didn't, still doesn't, make any sense at all. So I asked him what he meant and he repeated that he volunteers at a homeless shelter for 6 hours on Saturday and 6 hours on Sunday, every weekend. Of course I ask him why he would be embarrassed about that and he asks if we can talk about this more tomorrow, Sunday, and he can instead show me that he isn't lying by taking me to volunteer. I don't know what I was really thinking, I think my mind was just blank, so I agreed with a sure and asked him to leave. He apologized for the whole thing and left and then sent a text that he'd pick me up in the morning so he can prove to me that he's not lying. Of course my mind races all night and I tossed and turned all night, but Sunday came anyway. He wasn't lying. He takes me to a homeless shelter or soup kitchen place, I don't really know the difference, and we make food, clean, and pack daily necessities for 6 hours. It clearly isn't the place to have the conversation, so I spend most of my time doing the work and chatting with other people, and they were really nice, but of course the whole thing was still weighing on my mind the entire time, so I start asking them about my boyfriend, and they confirm that he's been working there as long as they remember and is there every weekend. He's been there longer than most of them, it seems. Finally our volunteering ends and we head back to his car. I try to start the conversation, but he shuts me down and asks me to wait until we get back to his place. I say fine, maybe I'm being a doormat here, but I was just so confused and lost, and we head to his apartment. Once there, the talking begins. He asks if I believe that he's telling the truth about working at the homeless shelter every weekend, and I say that I do since I confirmed it with a lot of people while there, but I also said that I don't understand the lying, especially for as long as he did. He apologizes again and asks if I really want to know why he kept it a secret. I say of course, duh. He sighs and then tells me that he doesn't like people knowing that he likes helping people. Obviously I'm like, what the heck, because this is so weird, and I ask him to explain. He tells me that when he was an undergrad student he would always try to help his class behind the scenes by discussing problems they had or negotiating for curves or extensions on their assignments even when he didn't personally need it. He said he enjoyed doing it and kept doing it as a master's student, but then started to do so before and after classes publicly. Apparently most of his classmates were still happy with him, but a few basically hated him for it because he was babying them or something. So he went back to doing things behind the scenes and no longer tries to associate himself with any of the things he does to help others. Hopefully I'm not the only one who finds this so dang weird. Like the homeless shelter stuff and assisting your classmates aren't remotely the same? I say as such and he tells me it does the same thing. It helps people, so he doesn't like people to know about it, because then they might misinterpret his intent and think he's masquerading as a good person. Then he assures me that he's not a good person at all, but he still wants to do what he can for people, so this is what he does. What the heck? So I ask if he really thinks I would get mad that he's helping homeless people in his free time. He tells me he wasn't sure at first, especially since I wanted to spend weekends together when we were first going out. Duh, every couple does. So he just lied to hide it at first, but he knows I wouldn't do that now, but kept the lie going because he thought it would be too weird to suddenly say that he's volunteering at a homeless shelter. I feel like I've come to the conclusion that he's just really, really weird. His way of thinking has always been odd, but this in particular is just so weird. Like, he seems to understand the situation and where I'm coming from, but didn't think to tell me the truth on his own. We started going in circles, so I ended the conversation and had him drive me home in silence. Since then he sent a number of texts and has tried to call me a few times. I didn't pick up on Monday or Tuesday because I felt like I needed time to think, But I finally picked up today and we had a talk in which we both reiterated what we had said. I know a lot of people, literally all of them at this time, were telling me to break up with him, but I'm still thinking things through. I'm going to try and get him to hang out this weekend and make my decision after that. I think some more. This whole thing has been so weird. I'm sorry that I've repeated that so much, but my brain is still rather scrambled. I don't think there will be any more updates to this because we either stay together or break up, but if there are, they won't be posted here. Update number 2, so I asked him to come over so we could talk and he did. I then asked him some of the questions people had on here that I had written down. Volunteering for 6 hours but still not having time for me. He said he would get there a little early and leave late, but would then spend the remaining hours running errands and actually working on PhD and assistant stuff. I asked if he could give me details. He gave some details about academic articles that I don't remember. I asked why he couldn't spend more weekend evenings with me if this was the case. He said that he was really busy with work and that I would distract him. Ouch. Out of all the things said, I think this is the one that bothers me the most. I asked if the volunteering was court-ordered. He laughed at that and was clearly confused by the question but answered that given the special population he works with doing his PhD, he doubts he'd be able to work with them if he had a record that required so many hours. I asked if he was ever going to tell me about the volunteering. He initially says he doesn't know, then replies that he probably wouldn't have. He apologized for lying but then said that whether he was working or volunteering doesn't make a difference to how much time he spent with me. Obviously I pushed back on this and he got defensive and we had an argument that basically reiterated how I felt like I couldn't trust him, because he was lying about this while he kept apologizing for the lying and making me feel that way, but that it wouldn't have changed how we spend time together. Ultimately I asked him to explain to me again why he hid it in the first place. Like he said previously, he used to talk to professors during undergrad about extensions and questions others had behind closed doors, and then make sure those things were stated to the rest of the class. He did the same thing in his master's program. This is where I got lost before. One of his professors was a hard-ass and some of his classmates were scared to talk to him about their grades, so he thought he could show them that he was willing to discuss grades and he made a joke about his own grade in class. The professor didn't find it funny and went on a tirade about respect and showing him up, and apparently the class ended shortly thereafter because it was so tense. He said that some of the other students felt like they needed to cut ties with him to show the professor they weren't in on the joke, and that a few of them made a show of hating him from that point forward. Hearing it more in-depth at least makes this make a little more sense to me. I stated again that helping homeless and helping classmates seemed like entirely different things altogether. He said that they felt like the same to him but that I was probably right and he was wrong. I asked him why he said he's a bad person. He replied asking if he said that and I said yes. He said that he didn't want the volunteering to make him seem like a good person because he's not. I asked what he meant and he replied that I know him. I said I'm not sure I do. He said that I know what he means. I don't, you do, etc. in circles. Personally, I think he has low self-esteem, but this is a weird way to express it and I'm not sure what else it could be. I told him I wasn't sure I wanted to continue the relationship because of the lying. He seemed hurt but then just said okay and that it's my decision. I told him that he should at least get therapy for the classmate thing because it's clearly affected him negatively. He replied that he probably should but he won't. After that I gave him an ultimatum, either spend more time with me on weekends and go to therapy or we break up. I told him to think about it and that he has until Saturday. He said he would and he went on his way. Final update. Saturday came and he asked me to compromise. He would take a day off from volunteering if I volunteered with him the other day and he wouldn't have to go to therapy. I said I needed to think about it. I told him later that night that I'd accept the compromise if he was willing to go to one therapy session. On Sunday morning, he told me he wouldn't be willing to go to therapy and asked that we go out to dinner. We went to a local diner and basically talked about ending things. He apologized for ending things this way and said that he knew he wasn't exactly being reasonable but he's doing what he feels like he needs to do. I basically said that that's up to him. We wished each other the best, he gave me a parting hug, and I went on my way. So yeah, 3 years of commitment for this. Kind of sucks. Have a good day. Small update, I'm pretty intoxicated while writing this, so let me just first say sorry for my incomprehensibleness. Is that even a word? Anyway, I've been keeping myself busy with school and stuff, but some casual stuff every once in a while has been good stress relief. What isn't good stress relief was a text message I received today. I should have blocked him but I didn't, so here we are. I didn't respond to him but here's the message verbatim. Hello, sorry for contacting you. I'm sorry for how I acted. After you left I really gave a lot of things some thought. I didn't want therapy because I didn't need a professional to tell me that I'm different or weird or diagnose me with something that jeopardizes my profession, and I especially didn't want them to try and change me. I bit the bullet in January. I was diagnosed with schizotypal personality disorder, you can look it up I guess. I'm not seeing the therapist frequently, especially after he suggested altering some of my behaviors and told me that I'm coping using my volunteering. Sorry, I'm just saying that you were right and I wasn't being fair to you. Please do not feel burdened to respond. I hope you are happy. God, he hopes I'm happy? I mean, really, after everything he acts like some sort of victim. I hate it so much. Every single time I've thought of him since we broke up I just get more angry. I guess it is nice to know that I wasn't imagining things and there is something actually wrong with him, But did he have to contact me? Gross. Anyway, I was huffing and drinking and spotted my login details still on my laptop desktop and figured an update wouldn't be too hard. I hope you guys know how to pick them better than me. I just found out I'm pregnant after getting with the fiancé of the girl my ex cheated on me with for 2 years. My ex, 32 male, and I, 26 female, met when I was 20 but were only friends until we started dating 2.5 years ago. I found out last year that my ex had been cheating on me for basically our whole relationship with a girl he met through a mutual friend. I broke things off after I found out and told the girl's fiancé about their affair, and he ended up breaking off their engagement after he found out, and she seemed nonchalant about it until she realized that my ex's money wasn't actually his. My grandma left me a lot after she passed back in 2019, and my ex had been flaunting around the things I'd gifted him throughout our relationship to her, even going as far as to claim that the house and antique car my grandpa left for me and his will were my ex's. It's not something I'm proud of now that I think back to it, but I did allow my ex to walk all over me for the first month or two after I broke things off because I missed him so much. I gave him money and tried to make things work but would always get reprimanded by my parents and friends when I'd run to them crying after he ghosted me for her. I didn't officially give him up until the girl's ex-fiancé messaged me and told me that she was rubbing it in some of their old friends' faces about how pathetic I was, and how desperate I was for my ex who didn't even give a damn about me. I was really upset and asked him if he'd be willing to meet up with me because I knew that if I talked to my parents or friends about this, then they'd just lecture me even more. He agreed and the two of us met up at a random food cart place. We ended up spending most of the day just exploring and talking about how we were doing. Well, he'd also confided in me about his relationship with his ex. They'd known each other for 10 years and they'd liked each other for most of the time they were friends, but he wasn't looking for a relationship because he was focusing on school. He had decided to give them a chance after she'd driven 12+ hours overnight to him because they talked on the phone, and he said he was feeling under the weather and was stressed from how vigorous his residency schedule was. She'd dropped everything to take care of him, helped clean his place, and made him some home-cooked meals after finding out that he was surviving off of vending machine snacks and instant coffee. He told me in detail about how he'd never felt so loved and cared for, how after she'd done that for him, he decided that she was the one, that if this wasn't love, then love wasn't real. Finding out that she was cheating for the last 2 years made everything click into place. She'd been pushing off getting married, telling all her friends that she was having doubts about him. He'd been trying to convince her into going to couples counseling when I broke the news to him that she was sleeping with my ex. I felt like a monster, hearing their love story and then realizing that they didn't get their happy ending because of my ex, and I really messed with my head. We continued to talk from time to time, checking in on each other and meeting up for a quick bite every now and then. We lost contact after the girl my ex cheated on me with somehow convinced him to take her back. I became slightly depressed after he cut me off, explaining to me that he was still in love with her and wanted to work things out, which meant a clean slate. I found out through some internet snooping that my ex cheated on her too, which was why she went back to her ex-fiancé. A few months passed and things went back to semi-normal. I started getting therapy and was about ready to put myself back out there to try out the dating pool again, when around New Year's I got a call from the guy. He was crying and asking if I was available to talk. I of course said yes and out of concern met up with him at his place. He broke down to me and told me about how he'd found her and my ex in his mom's guest bedroom during Christmas, when she'd snuck him in for a quickie during his family's busy holiday party. All hell broke loose when he found them in the guest bedroom after spending 20 minutes looking for her everywhere. We drank a bit and ended up making love. He apologized and told me that it was a mistake and he wasn't in his right mind, that he just wanted revenge lovemaking but it didn't make him feel any better after. I tried to message him platonically a few times after to see if he was alright but he blocked me, so I dropped it and went on with my therapy and life. I went in last week to check with my doctor since I'd been getting bad cramps and to get a new prescription refill for my birth control that I use to help with my PCOS. I had to do a usual test to double check for the possibility if I was pregnant and was very surprised when it came back positive. I have been sitting on this new knowledge and have been contemplating on if I should tell him, not tell him, or if I should even keep the pregnancy. My doctor did inform me that since I am still in the earlier stages I am still at a big risk of having a miscarriage, so I don't know if I should even be worrying at all about all of this since there is a chance that I could lose it, and then it'd just seem like I was trying to grab at his attention or something, especially after he'd made it clear to me that he wasn't comfortable talking to me anymore after we slept together. I haven't told anyone and have been going crazy because I don't know what to do. Update 1 year later, a lot has happened since my original post. I know a lot of people were against this, but I went through with the pregnancy and I am forever thankful for my beautiful baby. I had originally planned to get an abortion, but I found myself unable to go through with the appointment. I am pro-choice and always will be. Just because I chose to keep my baby doesn't mean another woman or girl should be forced to keep a pregnancy they do not wish to continue. Everyone has a right to their own bodies. My parents were very upset with me and my whole family disowned me. I listened to what some of you said about letting the father know. We'll be referring to him as Dave. After many failed attempts to reach out to him, I decided to go in person. Dave was not happy when I showed up at his place, but when I told him why, he agreed to talk with me. Dave let me know that he'd officially ended things with his ex and wanted to go no contact with me because I was another tie to his past with her, but he was willing to try and figure out a co-parenting plan with me if I agreed to a paternity test first. I of course felt a bit bad about the paternity test part but agreed to it since we both had only been acquaintances that bonded over our trauma. Everything was honestly easy cruising until I started to spot around the 26-week mark. My OBGYN explained that while spotting is normal while pregnant, mine was heavier and my blood sugar and blood pressure also both worried them, because of gestational diabetes and preeclampsia risk. After a few nights of Dave insisting on sleeping on my couch, I had him help me move some of my things to his place since he lived closer to the hospital. I'm very thankful I decided to semi-move in with him when I did because I went into premature labor at 52 weeks. I'm very thankful to have had Dave and his family as my support system. His mom would come and switch out with him at the hospital and advocated for me whenever I felt washed out or unheard. She helped me both emotionally and physically and stood by me. Dave's mom also helped me work through my emotions when all I wanted was my mom. She and my dad had gone no contact with me after I decided to keep and have my baby. Dave's mom was an absolute godsend also because she's a retired nurse. She started in OB, went to NICU and eventually later settled into lactation before retiring, and explained things to me when we found out that my baby had respiratory problems and had SUA, single umbilical artery, and that it could have been a factor into why I went into premature labor. She stayed with Dave and I so she could help me with pumping since I wasn't able to produce milk, and encouraged me when I felt like such a failure for not being able to take care of my son when he needed me most. She drove me to and from the hospital while my son was in the NICU because I was healing and so mentally and physically exhausted. I really and truly believe that I didn't fall into deep postpartum depression because she held me and helped me with each step and was always so patient with me, even when I wasn't with myself. Dave's mom would constantly remind me that nothing was our fault and no one did anything wrong, it's just that everyone is faced with hardships in life, and this was one we'd work together to get through. My son graduated from the NICU and came home a month after I did. Dave's mom visited us often and helped with him since Dave and I are first-time parents. Dave's dad joked that he felt like she and I had the baby together and he and Dave were both just background characters that make guest star appearances every now and then since Dave was working so much in order to build more PTO, and his mom wouldn't bring his dad along when she'd come visit, since she didn't want him to disturb me and the baby with his loudness. Dave's dad is hard of hearing and can sometimes be unaware of his volume so he took no offense to it. Dave's siblings and family members posted a lot about our son because he was the first grandchild and first baby in a long time. Dave's youngest cousin is 17, turning 18 this year. Somehow someone must have shared a photo or something, but pictures of us reached my family and my parents demanded I let them meet my son. Dave was supportive of whatever I chose to do and said he'd agree to them meeting him if that's what I wanted. After thinking about it for a few days I decided that I wanted to talk to my parents before I let them meet my son. When we met up to talk, my parents were offended that I didn't bring my son with us and left him with Dave's parents. They said some really hurtful things and then my dad started to question on when Dave was going to ask him for permission for us to get married, since we didn't already have a shotgun wedding while I was pregnant. I was okay with them insulting me since I'd grown up with it and was used to it, but once my parents put their target on Dave and his family I became upset and decided it was time for us to leave. My parents did try to petition for legal visitation rights. Honestly, before this whole ordeal, I did not even know that grandparents' rights existed, but were denied because my son is still very young and because both Dave and I are very much on good terms, are living in the same household, and they couldn't find or prove that there was any danger to our son's well-being. My family did try to reach out to us and claim that we were horrible people for denying my parents their grandchild, but no one ever seemed to be able to make a peep when Dave's family would defend us, and point out that my family had been the one to disown me, and that no one cared to see if I was okay until after I had the baby and everything was handled. Dave's mom and my mom got in a verbal, almost physical, altercation after my mom had made false reports to CPS and called the police to do multiple welfare checks on us. My mom was given a warning by the police for harassing us after one specific incident, where she threw a tantrum and caused a scene when the police found nothing wrong in the welfare check, and refused to listen to her demands to have my son temporarily taken away from us and put in her custody for his safety. Dave and I currently have restraining orders pending against my parents and certain family members. One of the reasons I decided to update is because about 2 months ago a friend of Dave's asked him out to have some drinks, and they ran into his ex-fiancée who later messaged him to tell him that she regretted the way they ended and how she was very hurt when she heard that we had a baby together, especially with it being so soon after their relationship. Dave wouldn't talk to me about how he felt, and when I asked him he just brushed me off or switched the conversation onto a topic about our son that he knew would distract me. I noticed Dave pulling away from me and how our relationship became a bit awkward and strained after their run-in and her message, because I know he still has feelings for her and I am afraid that he might feel trapped with me and our son. I also noticed that the drama with my family has made Dave and his family less patient with me and my son. During Mother's Day I overheard a few of his family members make comments to Dave about me being at their family barbecue since I was just my son's mom and not really part of the family. Dave just shrugged and said I didn't have anyone else to spend the day with. With how tense things have been, I have been thinking about moving out and back into my place. I stayed with Dave at his place after I gave birth, but now that our son is slightly older and I am healed, I want to give Dave back some space so that he can start dating again if he wants to and to give him back some more bachelor time when I have our son. I want to find a way to approach me moving out and us making a co-parenting plan without making things more awkward or possibly ruining the relationship I have with Dave and his parents. I don't want them to feel like I'm not grateful or anything, but I do want to go back to work and get my life back on track so that I can provide my portion of needs for my son, and not want to depend on his family for more than appropriate. My husband told me that he listens outside the bathroom door the entire time I'm showering to see if I'm self-pleasuring. Like 6 months ago, my husband, 26 male, came bursting into the bathroom to catch me, 21 female, using my vibrating toy in the shower. He threw a hissy fit about it and said that it was basically cheating, and guilted me into apologizing and promising not to do it again. The next time we went to use my toy, during love making as we basically always did, it had stopped working, mysteriously in hindsight. I often used it in the shower, I guess just because that's basically the only time I get to myself. I eventually just turned to using the shower head, and one time he pounded on the door during to ask what I was doing. Again, I didn't really think much of it at the time. Tonight I was showering, and not doing anything else, and when I came out he was being short and pissy with me. I asked if everything was okay and he says, "So how was your shower?" I said fine. Confused. He goes on to say he knows what I was doing in there, and I responded by asking what he was talking about, to which he replied that every time I shower he sits outside the bathroom door and listens to see if I'm self-pleasuring. I was so shocked I didn't even know what to say. How can I tell him that this is a violation of my privacy and personal space without him feeling like I'm disrespecting him? Edit to answer some questions. I'm going to try and answer a handful of the most frequently asked questions here. 1. We got together when I was 17 and got married last September. 2. I'm not on birth control as he says it disrupts your hormones and destroys your body, and I got pregnant around Christmas, but miscarried, and he told me that it was because I eat like shit and don't take care of myself. 3. My family does not like him and never has, and his family does not like me and never has. There is no harmony between our families and I rarely see mine anymore as a result. 4. He is controlling in many aspects of life, which I did not really realize until now. He judges me for what I wear, what I eat, what I read, who I hang out with, what I watch, what I listen to, etc. 5. If ever I was not with him anymore, I have no money and no place to go. I'm graduating university this year and he owns the house we live in solely in his name. My money is his money. I would have to go back to live with my parents. 6. I do not grow up religious and we met through mutual friends. 7. We are both from the same hometown but no longer live there. We're about 6 hours away. This was a mutual decision, however, and was not forced on me by him. If anything, it was more my idea. 8. He has never physically hurt me and does not yell or scream. He shuts down when he's angry and will ignore me for days on end while I literally beg him to talk to me. 9. He has never essayed me in any way, and our life in the bedroom is fine, but he is the only person I've ever made love with, so I don't know. 10. I'm going to sit down and talk to him and have my dad on standby, outside the house, to intervene in case he escalates. I am not currently considering divorce and am going to try and work with him. It's not an excuse, but his family is insane and I don't think he knows what he's doing isn't okay. 11. He does track my location through our iPhones, but we have each other's locations and I look at it sometimes if I get home and he's not there to see where he is or whatever. I've never really viewed it as being invasive. Edit. Also, this is not an opportunity or an invite to message me and tell me how much better you'd be for me or ask me to describe to you how I self-pleasure. It's also not helpful to tell me that I am the issue and that you'd be pissed off too. Thanks. Update 2 days later. Thank you so much to all of the amazing people who commented and reached out. I wasn't able to respond to anywhere near all of them, but I am so grateful to everyone for opening my eyes to how toxic and unhealthy this situation is. So, I called my dad and basically just explained that we were having some issues, and just to ease my mind I wanted him to come down and be nearby when I talked to my husband. He did not press for more info and told me that he was on his way. He and my mom live about 6 hours away, so it's not exactly a very ideal ask, but he didn't even hesitate, which I am grateful for. He arrived Friday night and parked outside our condo, and we agreed that I'd call him and immediately hang up if I needed him to come inside, in case my husband got aggressive or angry. I did not expect him to, since he never has before, but some of the comments made me feel like I'd better be safe rather than sorry. I debated all day Friday about how exactly to approach this situation and how I could trigger this conversation without him shutting down or getting angry. I decided to casually approach the conversation and ask him how he'd feel about me getting another toy to replace the one that mysteriously broke after he caught me using it in the shower. In response, he asked what for? To which I replied, because it feels good. I knew this would be his response, but it was something along the lines of, what, am I not good enough? As it usually was in the past. I explained to him that it has nothing to do with him not being good enough, and that lovemaking is supposed to be fun and experimental and interesting, and that it was just something that would make it better for both of us. He then suggested that I just wanted it to use on myself, to which I asked if that would be a problem. He told me that I know how he feels about that, and so I asked him why he was bothered by the idea of me self-pleasuring. He got very defensive and asked why I would want that when I could have him, so I asked if he ever felt like he'd rather just pleasure himself rather than going through the motions of making love. He said no, and that he's not a beta who spends his days stroking when he could be doing anything more productive. I explained to him that that was okay if it was his preference, but that sometimes my intimate desires are to pleasure myself versus having sex. That's when his same ridiculous argument came out of that being basically cheating. Pulling from another Redditor, I explained that cheating involves multiple people, and that it is impossible to be cheating if I am alone. He told me to piss off and go stick the shower head between my legs. I started to get upset and realized that here is when I always back down. I feel the need to apologize and make him feel better. I'd usually have started something and would end up guilt screwing him because I felt bad, but I didn't. I told him that he made me feel like he was trying to control me and my body and that I wasn't okay with that. He told me I could go be an effing whore somewhere else then and got up off the couch and ran upstairs. I could hear him slamming my drawers open and acting like he was putting my clothes in a bag. I resisted the urge to run up there after him and just decided to sit there and see what would happen. Eventually he came back downstairs and apologized and said that he's very uncomfortable with the idea of me self-pleasuring in our home. When I asked him to explain why, he said because it makes him feel unwanted. I told him that this isn't true, and that I do want him, but sometimes I just want that, and he said okay I guess. I decided to leave it at that for the night, and didn't want to press any further. I told my dad it was okay to go and that I was so sorry for wasting his time, and he told me he'd be staying the weekend at a hotel just to be safe. Eventually we went up to bed and I realized if I left it that it would just get swept under the rug like it always does. I'd go on putting up with this until it came full circle again, and I was not going to do that to myself. I decided to ask him about him telling me that he listened to me when I showered. I told him I wanted to talk about it, and he told me that he was just joking and that I'm a moron if I actually thought he was serious. I told him that it was an odd joke, especially considering he was angry and very much not laughing when he told me. He insisted that he was joking, and I told him that I didn't believe him. He then responded by saying he wouldn't do it again. This went in circles for a bit before he finally admitted to deciding to do this after catching me in the shower. Instead of accusing him of anything, I asked him if he thought that was an invasion of my privacy, to which he informed me that we are married and I do not have privacy. I told him that was an issue and that in order to have a healthy marriage we both needed privacy. He was determined that there is no such thing as privacy in marriage, so I flat out asked him if he wanted me in the bathroom while he was pooping. He said no. I said right, because you want your privacy. He told me that's different. Over the course of the next 10 minutes or so, this escalated from a simple conversation into a full-blown screaming match, and we got absolutely nowhere in our argument. It was like talking to a brick wall. I was so heated by this point that I don't even remember what was said, but he eventually told me I was a worthless whore, that I had nothing without him, that my vag was disgusting and made him sick, that I was fat and no one will ever want me. I'm 125 pounds by the way, that I'm lucky someone like him would even look in my direction, etc., etc., etc. I could barely see my phone through the tears, and I called my dad and asked him to come get me. My husband looked at me and said, "Your f***ing dad isn't driving 6 hours to come get you, you dumb fuck." I started to grab some random things of mine and yelled that he was here staying in town, and he broke down and started sobbing. He told me that he knows he's controlling, that he has serious issues, and that he's terrified of losing me. He said that he knows he's not good enough for me and that he's so afraid of losing me that he's pushing me away to save himself the inevitable heartache. He said that if he ever lost me he'd unalive himself. As I watched this grown-ass man snotting and crying in a heap on the floor, I kinda realized that I feel nothing for him. Like, nothing. The blinders I've been wearing were removed and I no longer saw the handsome, intelligent, caring, strong man I once did. I saw a pathetic, hurtful, controlling, sad, and sick person. I came to the realization in that moment that there's no fixing this, and even if he does change, I would never trust him or see him in the same way again. My dad knocked on the door and my husband ran and hid in the bathroom. I took my bags and went outside to meet him. He asked me if I wanted to talk about what was going on and I said no. He asked what I needed from him and I asked if we could just go back to his hotel room. He asked if my husband hit me and I said no. Before we had even gotten to the hotel my husband began texting me. It started with pleading with me to stay and forgive him and turned into insults over the course of the next day or so. He never threatened me physically, but told me if I didn't come home I'd lose him forever, that I'd be losing out on the best man I'd ever have, etc., etc. He told me that his friends laughed at him for being with such an ugly bitch, that his parents hate me because they know I'm not good enough for him, that I couldn't get pregnant because I'm probably a f***ing whore banging other guys on the side, that he was embarrassed to be seen with me in public, and so much more. I'm leaving. And not because Reddit told me to, because I'm genuinely not even remotely interested in staying with him and because I deserve better. I spoke to a friend from school, and will be staying with her until I'm done school next month. After that, I'm going home to figure some things out and get a fresh start. I'm currently in bed in a hotel room with my dad and have never felt more loved or safe. He is going to go over to the house tomorrow and retrieve my belongings, after which he is helping me move into my friend's apartment and then heading home. I don't have much to say at this point other than thank you again to everyone who made me realize how dangerous this situation could have been. I was determined that we were not going to divorce, but after Friday night I don't think there's any going back to that. I'm over it. I might update again, I might not. But making that post genuinely might have saved my life. Thank you. My boyfriend just found out about my past trauma, and now he is upset because he thought I was innocent when we first got together. Trigger warning, essay. This is the weirdest situation I've ever been in. I feel like it's not even real. My boyfriend, 23 male, and I, 20 female, have been dating for nearly 2 years. We're going through a rough patch currently, but we still love each other very much. 2 days ago, we were talking about social issues, feminism, etc., and the story of Brock Turner came up. We obviously both agreed that what happened was horrible and that Brock deserves to be in prison forever. I then started sharing my opinion about woke culture, adult content, and the patriarchy. In the middle of my rant, I said, as someone who's had those things happen to them and knows people that went through the same things. And he immediately cut me off and said, "What do you mean?" I then, as tears were filling up my eyes, revealed that I have been SA'd many times before. He was shocked for a moment, then asked me why I didn't tell him sooner. I honestly just didn't think about telling him. I try not to think about it. He then started asking me a bunch of weird questions. Questions like, how many times have you gotten SA'd? How can one even fit at that age? When's the last time it happened? I was getting really uncomfortable, especially because he looked more fascinated than empathetic. He then stopped himself and said, "Wait, so you lied to me?" I responded, "When did I ever lie to you?" And he said, "In the beginning of the relationship." I was so confused because I've never lied to him. I said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "Didn't you tell me you had your V card?" I said, "Yes, I had my V card." He said, "Well, apparently not, because I'm finding out you've made love before." My heart dropped. There's no way he's one of those people. I said, "Are you serious right now?" And he screamed back, "Yes." He was getting really angry, and I couldn't understand why. Like, if anything, he should be angry with the people who did those things to me, right? He then said, "I can't believe you lied to me about having your V card. I can understand that you didn't want to, but as soon as one goes in you, you don't have your V card anymore, I don't care which context." He also kept saying things like, "From a male perspective, this changes everything," or "Imagine you think you're with someone clean, only to find out they're used up." I was crying at this point. He looked at me with disgust and left. It literally took me so long to think about my essays without bawling my eyes out. It took me so long to be able to look at one of my abusers, we go to the same school unfortunately, without having a panic attack. Now, I feel like I'm back to square one. That's why I never talk about it. The only person in the world who matters the most now thinks I'm dirty. And honestly, he's probably right. Personally, I think I wasn't wrong for saying I had my V card, but I guess I should have told him sooner about my past. I spent the whole day crying, and I was seriously contemplating taking my life, so I called a friend to come over. I told her the entire situation, and she said that while she sympathizes with me, she feels like he's not 100% wrong. I didn't, technically, have my V card, so I should have told him before our first time and not let him believe that he was the one who took my V card. She said she would be upset too if her boyfriend led her on for 2 years. Now, I can understand this logic, but I feel like if you didn't want to, it doesn't count. Also, I'm more upset about his reaction and calling me used up like I'm some sort of dirty object. I feel like breaking up with him, honestly, but I also think I could explain my point of view and tell him that my goal wasn't to lead him on. I need outside opinions, please. Edit, I never explicitly mentioned to him that I have my V card. Our families have been friends for as long as we can remember, and during a game of truth or dare at a party when we were around 17 and 19, I simply said no when asked if I'd had made love before. I prefer to only be intimate within committed relationships, and since he's my first boyfriend, I think he assumed he was also my first intimate partner. Just to clarify, he didn't have his V card either. Update, some people wanted context. I used to get SA'd by 2 family members on my dad's side from 7 to 9 years old. I then got SA'd by a friend at a party when I was 18. He knows the friend who did this to me, lol. He's literally a known predator in our town, but no one seems to care. It took me a while to even realize that what my family did to me was SA. I get so angry at myself sometimes because it took me literally 10 years to realize. I started getting flashbacks and nightmares from those nights when I was around 17, and that's when it all clicked. Also, my parents are literal rope apologists, so there's no point in telling them anything. I also didn't wait almost 2 years to tell him about my SA. I just don't think about it. I don't like thinking about it because it makes me feel dirty. I still experience flashbacks occasionally and they haunt me. I don't want to talk about it at all. Sometimes I genuinely forget it happened to me, but in general, I'd rather act like it never happened. Anyway, he and I've known each other since I was born. Our parents were friends and they used to always make jokes about us dating, and when we eventually did, they were so happy. His family is very wealthy and mine isn't at all, so they, my parents, count on me to help them get out of poverty with his money. He's always known that I'm not a very intimate person, so if I were to make love it would be in a relationship. He's my first boyfriend, so that's why he thought I had my V card. Update, I texted him saying that we needed to talk. FYI, we've been having issues lately, like not too long ago he got super mad at me because I didn't want to make love with him on my period. I ended up apologizing because his birthday was coming up and I just wanted to celebrate with him. Anyway, he came over and I told him that while I understand him feeling misled, what he said was completely out of line and I can't trust him anymore. He did apologize but kept defending his point, saying things like that's not something you keep from your partner, or I thought I was your first and finding out that someone else went in before me is shocking. I was so disgusted at the way he was speaking about my assaults. I asked him if he knew the difference between consensual love-making and rope because the way he was talking didn't feel like he did. He got kind of offended as if I was questioning his intelligence but ended up saying yes. I said then why would you call an SA victim used up, and he said that it just came out and that he didn't mean it. Now, I can understand that, but I certainly wouldn't have said that if I were him. I said I don't understand your obsession with my V card, you didn't even have your V card either. He said at least I didn't lie. I started crying and yelling I'm not a liar, because I didn't lie, and I was just so frustrated because it feels like I do everything to understand where he's coming from but it's never reciprocated. Also, he acts like I got SA 2 weeks ago, like, I was literally 7, can we move on? I also brought up his comment about how can one fit at that age, saying that it was very inappropriate and that it made me want to throw up. He again said that he was just thinking out loud. I then asked him why he didn't comfort me at any point, and he said that it was because he was just shocked and blinded by the fact I lied. I didn't even know what to say. I was so confused because we were literally having a conversation about rope culture before that, and he was saying things I agreed with. It felt like two completely different people. I eventually said that I want to break up, and he begged for us to go on a break instead. He literally got on his knees and cried, saying he couldn't lose me and that he'll do more research about SA and that he wants to learn. I said I'll think about it. As for my friend, I didn't even contact her. I don't know what to say. I know she didn't mean any harm by what she said. She doesn't like picking sides. She wants everyone to get along, but it really hurt me. Especially because I just wanted some comfort, to be honest. Final update. Hi. I finally found the strength to leave him yesterday, so I'm gonna tell you how everything went down. He called me and asked me to come over. I brought a backpack to pack some of my things because I knew it was the perfect opportunity to break up. As soon as I let myself in, he went in for a kiss and I dodged him. He asked me if I was still mad about the situation, and I said that I'm not mad and just really hurt. He said I thought you would have gotten over it by now, it's been almost a week. I don't know why, but when he said this something clicked. I realized that this man doesn't feel any empathy, he doesn't care about anyone but himself. This actually got me mad, so I started packing my things without saying anything. He was like, "What are you doing?" and I said, "We're over." He started freaking out, asking me why. I wasn't responding, I just kept packing. After a couple of minutes of me packing, he randomly pushed me on the bed and got on top of me and started screaming, asking why I want to break up. I was crying because I was so scared. I just kept repeating, "Let me go please," and he would say, "I'll let you go if you stay, and if you stop packing." I eventually agreed to stay and he let me go. He said if it's about the SA thing, I said I was sorry. I know I shouldn't have said that. You're not gonna throw away an almost 2-year relationship over an incident. I said I just wanna go. He said, "Why can't we just get back together? You said we'd go on a break." He was crying, talking about how we grew up together and that all his memories have us together. He said that we're so involved with each other it would be weird to just cut each other off. I said I didn't care and he got super angry and yelled at me. He took my backpack and dumped everything on the floor. I was so over it at this point, so I didn't even care. I headed to the door, but he grabbed my arm and brought me to the bed again. He started kissing me everywhere and I was panicking because he was holding my wrists with his hands. I was sobbing because I actually thought he was going to do something to me. He eventually stopped but asked me to please stay together. I said I would if he just gives me some space. He agreed, so I got up, got my stuff and left. On my way home I texted his parents to tell them everything. I texted him too and said that I told everything to his parents and not to contact me again, then I blocked him. His parents were super apologetic and thanked me for telling them. I think his parents contacted mine to tell them what happened because my mom called me screaming to ask me why I broke up with him. Now, I don't have a close relationship with my mom, or any of my family members really, so I just said I don't know, then I hung up. I think she knows what happened because she talked to his parents, but then I don't know. As for my friend, I sent her this really long paragraph saying that what she did was unforgivable. I said that by not taking sides she took my boyfriend's side, that she basically agreed with what he said. She replied saying that she understands where I'm coming from. She was super apologetic and admitted that now looking back she understands that what she did was not okay. She said that she understands if I want to cut her off, but our friendship means a lot to her. I said I didn't want to completely cut her off, but I want to keep my distance. I think that's it. Also, I started doing some research about EMDR therapy and I think that's something that could help me. I'll check it out. Thank you for everything. I want to leave my boyfriend of 8 years because of no proposal, but my friends and family are calling me selfish and are threatening to tell him. A bit of backstory: my boyfriend, 30 male, and I, 29 female, met in high school but weren't friends. I was getting bullied and was unattractive, and he was part of the popular crowd and was friends with some of my bullies. We reconnected again in college when I was doing much better and was actually attractive, and got together a little after that. It was a sore spot in our relationship at first, but I worked through the insecurities I had, and he supported me. He's my first for everything. I'm not his first for anything. My boyfriend Ryan and I have been together for 8 years now, but I want to leave because I feel like he'll never propose to me. Our relationship was great at first. Despite my insecurities, we went to couples therapy, my request, and that helped a lot. We went on frequent dates, studied together in college when we could, shared interests, lots of intimacy, always on the same page. We rarely ever fought, and I was sure I was the luckiest girl alive for not having to go through the date and breakup chapter of life. I thought he was going to be my first and only, but I'm obviously having second thoughts now. Around the 4-year mark I was ready to get engaged to him. We talked about marriage briefly over this time, but nothing crazy since we were still getting on our feet and this was my first relationship. He still wasn't really ready to be tied down yet, in his own words. I always laughed it off because I also didn't want to suddenly become a housewife. I never wanted to be one, but he wanted me to, and that was one of the conditions for us getting married. His family wouldn't accept me if I was working, but I already had a job and degree. I was enjoying my own money and the lifestyle 2 incomes could provide. I loved him though, and was willing to put it aside. My family had no opinion on this. Our families were hinting at our engagement, but Ryan hadn't bought a ring as far as I knew, and we barely talked about it. He would always shut down and get pretty angry about it, then would leave with his friends to go cool off and come back late at night. He has a mixed group of 5 friends including himself, guys and girls, the youngest being Emma who's 24 and the oldest being Carter who's 32. They're all friends from work, and yes, I'm a little insecure about Emma. She's the fun bubbly blonde while I'm not. Emma also doesn't like me, and has texted my boyfriend about it. I saw the notification clear as day unintentionally when he left his phone out, and never confronted him about it. I'm in therapy for my self-esteem and communication, and it's much better than it used to be. After a few more years of this, and watching all my friends get married, I started talking to my best friend Mary about wanting to be engaged. She told me it'll happen when it does, and not to worry. My mom and sister said the same thing. It stung when my sister just told me to wait, because she was engaged and married within a year to her boyfriend. I started getting a little resentful, but tried to keep my head up and let things just play out. I brought up marriage more often, even the thought of kids, and he would always just shut down. He'd be grumbling and lock himself in our room if he didn't go out. I'm just over it. I think I'm falling out of love with him, and just want to be loved for real. I feel like I wasted my 20s. I could have been married by now. Marriage isn't the only thing on my mind, but it is a major one. Ryan just doesn't seem to treat me the way my friends' husbands treat them. I noticed it as we got deeper and deeper, but I chose to ignore it since I was still new to all of this. I told Mary this and she told the other 2 girls in our group. She also told my sister, who told the rest of my family. I'm getting tons of texts and calls from my aunts and sister especially telling me not to leave such a great guy over something so small, but it isn't small to me. They're all already married, so it doesn't matter to them, but it matters to me. Marriage was a goal in my life. They're all calling me selfish, threatening to tell Ryan, and my sister is even saying that I must be cheating to want to leave so close to the finish line, which couldn't be further from the truth. Plus, what finish line? I don't see a proposal happening anytime soon, and at this point, I don't even want it. Ryan is out with his friends again at a bar, and I just feel so ugly and worthless again. I feel pathetic for being 29 not married, crying, and not making my relationship work. Mary broke my trust too by telling people, and it's messing with my head. I just want to be married to a guy that loves me. Update. Hello everyone. It's been a crazy few weeks or however long it's been, and I thought that now is a great time for an update. In short, I left him. Or, he left me. Lol. To that one person who replied to almost everyone saying that it was all my fault, and that I should have just proposed to him myself, use your brain, please. I'm going to address some comments, Mary, what happened, and a bit more detail since I was a wreck when I wrote it. To the sweet and helpful comments, thank you so much for helping me open my eyes. I should have realized a long time ago that Ryan was not the one for me. He does not treat me with respect or care, and I truly did think that I was in love and that I'd never find someone better. Thank you so much for helping me realize that I deserve better. Feeling indebted to the hot guy from high school who noticed me is not something anyone should live with. As for Mary, we are no longer friends. Mary was always the group leader and a classic mean girl, and I was the classic meek bullied girl with no confidence who listened to her every word. I'll get into this later. Extra detail, my aunts and sister were very adamant about Ryan being an amazing guy. Why was this? Ryan was amazing at putting up fronts. To our families and friends he was incredible to me. He would buy me expensive jewelry, compliment me often, show me off, isn't my girlfriend gorgeous? Supported my hobbies, only to them though. He never listened to me or cared at home, and bragged about anything he could to seem amazing. He listened to everyone's problems, offered amazing advice, everything you could imagine. He was very hot and cold with me too. When I wouldn't do something he liked, he would give me the silent treatment or call me names on the occasion. When I did do what he wanted, I was a princess and goddess. You get the idea. It's hard to notice the signs or accept them. Okay, on to the update. Ryan came home a little after 2:30 a.m. and avoided me. He woke me up to ask me if I was done being a beach and slept on the couch when I wouldn't respond. When I went to properly confront him in the morning, he was gone. Mary and my family had told him that I wanted to leave and that I was having my doubts. He left a note on the front door telling me that he was staying with a friend for space, and that he doesn't think that he could stay with me after I did something so hurtful when he's done nothing wrong. The audacity, lol. I packed my things because I was done. Once I had all my things together, I ended up sending Mary a text asking for an apology, and of course she refused, and didn't even know what she should be apologizing for. She told me that I was the one who ruined my relationship, and that her telling Ryan was out of good faith because he was a good man. Sparing the details, the conversation lasted roughly half an hour over text, and by the end of it, she was pissed and texted me how she never should have given me a chance all those years ago. I just blocked her. Ryan had came home at some point late at night and we sat down and talked. He was very nonchalant at first and asked me if I was ready to put this behind us. I said no. We had a very up and down conversation. I asked him why he didn't want to get married to me, and he said that we don't need a piece of paper to prove our love. I said how he knew that I always wanted to get married and that he was wasting my time. He didn't like that, got angry, and asked if I was trying to leave him. Long story short, he ended up calling me every name in the book, went on and on about cheating on me, how he was never going to marry me, I was this, I was that. I should have seen it coming. Luckily for me though, I didn't cry. I usually always do in an instant, so this made him beyond angry. But it was thanks to all you lovely folks. Thank you. The police were called due to the noise, and Ryan broke up with me and left to stay with one of the girls. I came to find out he had been, allegedly, since there is no proof. It was just said during the breakup, but I honestly do believe it, cheating on me with one-night stands, Emma, my sister, my aunt, and had mentioned how he had multiple girlfriends that weren't me, but who knows. He said how he was going to marry one of them instead. I got checked for STDs already, and I'm clean, thank God. It made me very, very sick to think about him potentially giving me a disease. He took his things with him with police supervision, and I got the locks changed later that week. Our lease was broken, no repercussions due to the police, and I found a new apartment just the other day. I don't think I will be dating for a while, but I do hope to still someday be married. I don't think I'll ever have my own biological children, which is my biggest regret and my deepest loss, but that's how life goes sometimes, unfortunately. I wanted to experience pregnancy and childbirth, the bonding with my baby and teaching first everything's, but it will be okay. I wish I had noticed all the signs sooner and left him for someone who truly loved me. I've been looking into therapy and have had lots of up and down since. I cut my family off, my old friend group, and have been teasing the idea of getting into Pilates lol. Thank you again to everyone who left a kind comment. I'm grateful that I wasn't hurt during the breakup because it was very rough. Ryan originally called and texted a lot, but I anticipated this. I want to get a restraining order, but don't know how that works yet. I will be working from home for a while due to safety concerns, but I feel free. I hope in the future I can tell you all how I'm happily married to a lovely man and a stepmommy to lovely children.